Welcome to Sweden, Professor Fama, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So I read that one of your heroes, Friedrich Hayek, has said that the Nobel Prize confers on an individual an authority which in economics no man ought to possess. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes. Well,
Why?
I mean, people treat you as if you know things that you don't know. So a month ago, people wouldn't have dreamed of asking me questions that they started asking me after I won the prize. And I didn't change, so.
So you think the prize is wrong?
I don't think the prize is wrong. I just think that people don't understand that you got the prize for a specific kind of research.
And suddenly you become the
world
guru
authority on everything.
On everything.
Right.
So you coined the term efficient markets and
Yes.
market efficiency in 1965, right?
Yes,
In a
right,
paper.
right.
Any regrets?
No, not at all.
No?
No.
Why?
Well, that's a concept that generated a mountain of empirical work. We understand whatever side you take on the issues, all the work that was done to test that hypothesis enlightened us about how markets actually perform and work. So I don't think there's any question that we know a lot more about markets because of all the work that was done to test that proposition.
And you've tested it and you've found some contradictions in the way that markets work as well.
Not a lot.
Not a lot, no. But some people, like for example, Professor Shiller, pay a lot more attention to those contradictions than you do, right?
Well, the way I would say it is, we agree on the evidence, we disagree on the interpretation. So what he interprets as market inefficiency, I'm not so convinced that it really is. So it's a disagreement about how to interpret the actual evidence.
Because there's a lot of attention around this, you know, are markets rational or irrational in relation to this Nobel Prize. But does economics need a theory about human behavior? Do we need to know to do good economic science or research? Do we need to know if human beings are rational or irrational?
Yeah, we have to talk one human being at a time. Right?
Yeah.
So, some are, some aren't, I guess.
Yeah.
But economics is about behavior. Supply and demand is about behavior, and all of economics comes down to supply and demand. So the fact that behavior gets introduced into economics is nothing new for economics, I don't think. But what the new behavioral stuff says is there's lots of irrational behavior out there, and then the disagreement comes in terms of how does that affect markets? So that's the kind of the focus point of the arguments, to the extent that there are arguments.
So in the current debate, there's lots of talk about asset bubbles and housing bubbles, and you don't agree with that they exist, or you?
Right.
Tell me about that.
Well, I don't know of any systematic evidence. So it depends on how you define the word bubble to begin with. The way I think people use the word, there are lots of different interpretations in economics of that word. So, but I think the way people interpret it is they interpret a bubble as a long price increase that implies a predictable decline. And I've looked at all the evidence, and other people have looked at all the evidence. There's no evidence that there are predictable declines. So when people say there are bubbles, what I say is that's a religious opinion.
Okay.
It's not in the data.
So if they're not bubbles, what are they?
They're just up and down movements of prices that are interpreted after the fact as bubbles, but they were never predictable.
But did we, these bubbles, or not bubbles, or whatever we call them, did we underestimate the consequences they could have on the macroeconomy? Oh,
well, we probably did, in the sense that we hadn't seen a recession like the recession that occurred in 2008 since 1930. I'm not a macroeconomist, but I think macroeconomists in general thought that that kind of thing wouldn't happen anymore because they knew so much about the economy now that it was all under control. So what they learned is they don't have it all under control, and you can get hit with a big recession. But that period says nothing about market efficiency. because the markets responded perfectly efficiently to those things. In my view, a big recession comes, markets go down. That's what they do. That's what they're supposed to do.
What does the market need to do to be considered inefficient in your
Well, so if
theory?
there were predictable declines after long price increases, then that would open my eyes to it. But I'm an evidence person. I'm not at least when it comes to economics, if I don't know based on the evidence, I say I don't know. Or if I express an opinion, I want to earmark it as an opinion and not something that's based on evidence.
So did you learn anything from the current financial crisis?
Yes, what we learned has really nothing to do with markets. It's having to do with what we have to do to make sure that we can avoid what I think is the biggest problem that came out of the financial crisis, which is that the big banks had to be bailed out by taxpayers. And I'm a libertarian.
So you don't think they should have been bailed out?
Well, it's irrelevant because anytime it happens, they are going to be bailed out.
Yeah.
So it's really irrelevant what you think about it. So it doesn't matter which political party is in there at the time. When you get a crisis, they're going to get bailed out. So what you have to do is to make sure that you don't have to bail them out.
I see.
And what that means is you have to make sure that they're not as risky as they were going into this.
So you're a libertarian arguing for financial regulation right now?
In this respect, yes, because if the end result is going to be that the taxpayers have to pay, that's a perversion of capitalism. That's the worst possible outcome you can think of, because it gives people an incentive to take risks because they have what we call a put option, which in simple terms means they get the upside, we get the downside. And who wouldn't want to have that kind of option? So I think you have to take that out of their hands. If you were willing to let them fail under any circumstances, you wouldn't have to do that. But nobody's willing to do that because they perceive that it's too disruptive.
Yeah,
and may well be. And it's really irrelevant because nobody's going to let it happen.
There's no room for ideology in a financial crisis, right?
So I think that the response to all of that has to be that they're required to hold much more equity capital than they were in the past. That's the big message that I think came out of that experience, is that all the extensive regulation, Dodd-Frank in the U.S., and the European banks are going through, Basel, whatever it is, I don't know the number at this point. Three, okay. That they're trying to determine what the level of capital should be. And I would say they're probably, whatever number they take, I'd say add 10% to it.
You say
just
add 10%?
To be sure, right?
Thank you. Well, that's an interesting point of view.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure, my pleasure.